Scams. They're running rampant through Australia with hundreds of thousands of claims, billions of dollars lost and countless lives ruined. Well, today we got our first look at how the government plans to fix it all. So, how does it stack up?
The main emotion is frustration, anger, sadness that someone would take advantage of a family who's going through this, and who knows, it's for the kids.
Father of two, Owen Harris-Singh, had the best intentions when he set out to buy his daughter's new Game Boys.
My wife was recently diagnosed with cancer, currently going through chemotherapy treatments, and I was looking for a way to distract my kids. I kind of stumbled across these on a local marketplace group.
But Owen soon found out he had fallen into the trap of a Facebook scam.
He seemed like an older gentleman, so he said he didn't use PayPal, but his wife had Pay ID and was going to send the goods after I sent half of the funds, and then once I received the goods, I would send the other half of the money. I did lose $200.
Owen is far from alone. Last year, Aussies lost almost $3 billion to scams. Today, the government's unveiled greater detail around how it plans to stop fraudsters. First, telcos will be forced to block the numbers of known scammers and ensure that when you get a text from your bank, it's the real deal.
The next phase is building a public response from the private sector, particularly in banks, telecommunications companies and social media platforms. Our laws will have new legal obligations on them to prevent, to detect, to respond and to disrupt scams.
And they want everyone involved sharing intelligence. So if Facebook knows someone is a scammer, they can tell your bank and the government in real time.
We take the view that preventing a crime from happening is much better than coming back later and compensating somebody who's been damaged because of that crime.
But what they're not promising is automatic refunds for scam victims.
My concern is that'll create a honeypot. You know, criminals from around the world will focus on Australia because banks will always bail out the victims.
So, is this the end of the road for scammers, or have we barely scratched the surface?
Stephanie Tonkin from the Consumer Action Law Centre is here to tell us. Stephanie, what do you think? Is this the end of the road for the scammers? Have we got them?
Well, the Assistant Treasurer has introduced a scams prevention framework, draft legislation that does impose some good obligations on businesses to protect their customers, to protect people using their platforms. But unfortunately, when the rubber hits the road for consumers, when someone has fallen victim to a scam, they're shouldered with the burden of having to navigate the system, of having to take the fight to these multinational corporations to seek some form of repayment.
Yeah, so how does it actually work? I mean, the plan involves something called preventative mechanisms involving banks, telcos, social media companies. But can you actually break it down for us? Like, what does this actually look like for people at home?
While there'll be a lot more detail in the codes of practice, what the framework sets up is this battle for compensation. A consumer will have to go to their bank or to a platform like Meta or a telco, and they'll have to say, I've been scammed and I don't think you've met your obligations under these new laws. And if they're not happy with that response, then they can go to external dispute resolution and again fight it out against each of those businesses. Consumer advocates from across the country have pored over this legislation, and using our experience, we predict that there'll be around 30 plus steps in order to navigate this system, and it could take many years for a scams victim to see any form of compensation.
Stephanie, I just wanted to ask you, in practical terms, what do you want to see happen sooner rather than later?
Well, the proposed scams prevention framework, while it's a good start, we're not going to see the obligations come online until potentially 2027, 2028 even, and beyond. So we'd like to see some level of obligation on business as soon as possible. This could all be sped up if we just went down a simple, easy, common sense path of presumption of reimbursement with limits, so that a bank is quickly reimbursing their customer, and then the bank goes business to business and sorts out liability behind the scenes while a victim can move on with their lives. That's what consumer advocates have been calling for a long time now. It makes sense. We've got a template from the UK that we can improve on and become the best jurisdiction in the world for scams protection.
And Stephanie, just before you go, what is your mother's maiden name?
No reason. Nearly got her. That's how easy it is. That's how easy it is.
That's how you scan.
But Stephanie, outsmart you. I love that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.